Hello there, this is Reilly Malpass with my oral assessment. My question is, how can the post-war economic miracle in Japan be explained using macroeconomic indicators which can be replicated? Some background information on this topic. The post-war economic miracle was a period of time in Japan following the end of the Second World War where Japan was devastated. They had sunk all of their money into the war in China, as well as the war in the Pacific. As the war came to an end, America had laid siege to the island country, destroying cities and factories alike. Then America began their occupation, as well as giving aid to the country that they themselves had destroyed, for the purposes of protecting the world from the grasp of the Soviet Union. This question is important because at the end of the Second World War, Japan was in a state of economic disarray. Mass unemployment, sudden influx of those abroad in previously annexed land, a sudden energy crisis, as well as major inflation. These issues led Japan to a complete turnaround into becoming the second largest economy by the end of the Cold War, only behind the United States. This question poses serious implications, seeing as no other economy in modern history has made such a resounding comeback, so such an outlier should be looked at in detail to better understand how this could possibly be replicated if necessary. Looking at GDP, both real and nominal, one can see that Japan has GDP growth percentages above 10%, which is a very high number in terms of growth. Most countries do not achieve numbers higher than 10 unless they're in time of war, specifically America, though the negative growth rates are due to energy crises that the country learned from, and you can see that in the 1980s it only really caused inflation but didn't really affect the GDP. Looking at unemployment rates, you can see that in Japan the percentages were very low, wavering between 1% and 3%, while in the same time period the United States was anywhere between 3.5% and approximately 11%. When comparing these two, including population, it's approximately a third or less in Japan when compared to the United States. Now, foreign aid here is the key. With the United States being the largest economy at the time, their presence in Japan during the occupation era gave Japan the framework to start their seemingly impossible shift. Hundreds of millions of US dollars entered Japan during this period, as well as during the Korean War, from the military stationed there, which gave Japan the necessary funds to jumpstart things. This jumpstart allowed Japan to take in a large influx of imports, of which they used to create their booming economy of exports that included cars and technology. Japan had to make this decision of using a vast portion of their post-war funding to purchase all those imports to make a sizable profit from their exports in the future. They could have just used this money to repair their devastated country. The marginal cost of these imports ended up being very worth the decision when you look at how they took in over $2 billion in imports during and following the occupation era, to causing havoc in foreign markets who chose cheaper and better made Japanese imports, putting a stress on those countries' economies. It is relatively hard to place any limitations, seeing as this event is well within the past, over 50, 60 years ago, and has been researched and discussed at length, so the only limitation lies with my or anyone else's ability to gather that data and appropriately map it. The large assumption here is how willing other countries would be to give as much aid as Japan received from the US and its allies during the beginning of the era, as well as the exceptional fortitude of the population of Japan. These assumptions are rather rigid and improbable ones that only stand up because they have already occurred, so I highly doubt anything like this will take place within our lifetimes or even further. It truly was a miracle.